Hi, this is Catherine. This is Taking Tea with Catherine, and this is Louisa May Alcott green tea from Simpson and Vale. I drank it mainly because I like it, but also because I am trying to drink more green tea this year. I haven't quite made the goal that I set out earlier for drinking more green tea. Like I thought I'd do it every afternoon. Not quite, but I'm trying, and that's pretty good. Maybe I could try a little more in 2021, maybe not. So I thought I'd do kind of a tea and rambling video along the lines of what a lot of booktubers that I've been watching have been doing, and I've been enjoying watching their videos. Very introspective, um, about my reading plans, goals, schemes for next year. And this is not about specific top books that I plan to read next year. I might do videos like that, but for now, it's just kind of a conversation. And yeah, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself, but I just have some thoughts. And one of them is about quantity. And on Goodreads, I have set a challenge, but even on other sites that reading sites that I've done, for the past decade or so, I've put 75 as my challenge. Sometimes I make it, sometimes I surpass it, sometimes I don't, and I've been pretty good either way. Either way, every year, I'm like, yes or no, doesn't matter. And I think I'm pretty much going to stick with that for next year too. And I'm trying, a big goal is not to compare myself with others. I'm talking about not the average person in the street. I'm talking about booktubers, because there are booktubers who read who read 75 books in a month, and I just, you have to go at your own pace and just enjoy what you're reading. If I'm worried about what I'm going to talk about, I have plenty to talk about, obviously. Plenty of books to talk about, so I'm not so much worried about that. But we humans compare themselves to others. We do that. And I know this is mostly about me and not about what you all should do, but we do. But we try, but I'm going to try not to. And I'm trying not to worry about my reading speed either. That became a thing that, all right, this is terrible, but I've had an issue for many years with certain twitching issues that I don't know if that's the word, but certain hand, eye, other movements that I've had trouble controlling since I was a kid. And sometimes I'll go some time without noticeably doing so, and someone will bring up to me, hey, you haven't been doing that in a while, and suddenly I'll start doing it because now it's been brought up to my head and I can't stop. Now, I sort of spilled. That sort of happened to me in a weird way when a number of people brought up subvocalizing. I remember hearing a lot about that when I was learning Arabic. Basically, when you're learning to read a language that the alphabet is completely different than yours, even if it was similar to yours, it is hard to read without subvocalizing, which means basically that you're reading as you would read out loud, word and word and word, but in your head. So basically going the speed at which you would talk, almost. Maybe a little bit faster, but still. And it will keep you not reading as fast as maybe you want to. Now, I wasn't sure if I subvocalized, but when it was brought up and I was reading a book, suddenly I became very conscious of, am I subvocalizing? And then I started subvocalizing big time, and I couldn't do anything but if I really look back, I feel like I do somewhere in between. Like sometimes I sit and I read every word, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just go through phrases. Unless your whole goal is speed, I don't think there's a right or wrong, and I think I'm okay with it, but I'm trying to talk about it now and not to talk about it again, because I don't want to keep thinking about it, because it took away a little bit of my reading joy. I'm not blaming anybody, but it took away some of my joy because I kept coming back to that. And I don't need that, but also, I think sometimes striving toward an amount is going to add pressures that I don't need and take away from what I want to be reading. I'll give an example. This is not a specific example, but let's just say you join a reading challenge for a month. Let's say you say, I'm going to read 20 books in a month. And you get to about 16, 17, and you're in the middle of a really good book, but it's a big book. It's just a chunky book that you picked up that you just love, and you're not going to finish it. And if you did finish it, you're only going to hit maybe 18 books. And oh no, not 20. So you put this wonderful book aside and you pick up like these kind of books. No offense to these kind of books, but you know, these little tiny, tiny books, because you can read them all within a sitting and you're going to hit 20 and you might surpass 20. Look at you, you made it. But even if these weren't so bad, you were only reading it so that you could say you've read a certain amount. So like that's what I don't want to be like. I don't want to, and I don't think I do this all the time, but I don't want to be reading just because numbers, you know what I mean? Or at least I don't want to be a habit of it. And that also applies to me for when you read a book, some books, not all books. This is BookTube, so we talk about books, right? If we couldn't call it BookTube for some legal reason, I'm sure that would be changed to something like BookishTube or ReaderTube, maybe, because we're all readers. And I know that would imply more types of reading than books. But it would still be a good alternative. I consider myself a reader more than anything. But it is still BookTube, and I think we're more focused on books itself, in whatever form. I have paper, books, but it could, it could be audio, etc. But when we're getting into the amount of books we read, we talk about books that we read from cover to cover, right? So if I read 75 books in a year, it's books that I read from cover to cover. I don't count anything else. But sometimes when I'm too focused on that, I will take myself away from other things I wanted to read, like essays. I have read essay collections in their entirety, but sometimes essays were usually scattered in different journals, and then they were gathered together in a volume. So they're not technically meant to be read together. So if you do, fine, but if you don't, why should you stop just because I'm only going to read a few essays in here? I'm only going to read a few articles. I'm only going to read... I'm reading a journal, a periodical that I really like. I'm reading some poems, but I can't anymore because I'm not going to read the whole poetry book and I need to be reading my books, right? I like some short stories in this book, but I don't want to read the whole book, etc. There's so many instances of that. And so my goal is really to not think about that. If I want to read some poems, I'm going to sit and read some poems. If I want to read an essay, just one essay, I'm going to do that. And so on. So... I don't know if you guys have that issue too, but I know my sister and I used to have reading contests, which I don't actually encourage, but we were kids, so we were competitive. And we had an agreement that we had certain periodicals that we liked to read. And aside from the ads, if we were to read everything in that magazine, for instance, that's fine. But we'd have to maybe read 5 of them to count as one book. So maybe it's not the same as counting an entire book, but we kind of realized that it's part of our reading. And so we didn't want to remove that from our reading enjoyment, if you like to read it, right? So without the competitive edge, I want to remember that. And although I won't do that when I'm counting books, I would like to remember that it doesn't matter if it doesn't count. Enjoy it. There's a book that I returned to the library recently that I only wanted a few chapters out of. And I was going to push myself, and I'm like, why? But I'm not going to count it as a book I read this year because I didn't read the whole book. So, And then there's quality, which I think is more important. And your definition of quality varies, so I'm not saying this type of book isn't quality. Never. But obviously I worked this year a lot on reading classics, and I enjoyed it. Totally. I love reading history. I love reading nonfiction. I want to keep going in that direction. Because I feel like I haven't read enough history this year. I did read, but not enough. So I'll work on that. And this is a word that, I'm not sure if it's quite the right word, but I'm just have to use a word. So I want more diversity in what I'm reading. And not so much genre, because I'm good, I think, with genre. But, I mean, there's been a lot of awareness this year, but, and it should be continued. It shouldn't be just, this is something we're all doing, and then next year we're going to forget about it. No. But what I mean is, I know what I tend to read the most of, and that is books that are either written by people in North America, United Kingdom, maybe Ireland, some France, I don't know. And mostly white writers. So I know that there is a bit of a need to work on that for myself. I did work on it this year, and previously, I every year, if I'm gonna actually look at it, yes, I do not limit myself 100%, but I know where my the bulk of my reading skews, and it's not a matter of shame for me, and it's not a matter of being feeling guilty. It's just a matter of reminding myself that because it's not just okay, I need to read more people of color, but that is something I've been trying to do, but even just other countries that I don't read much about. Writers, I should say, from other countries, not necessarily travel to those countries, because I do read quite a lot of that. But still, the authors are generally the same, and I could still do that, but not, a little change is kind of good, because I think getting to know people through books or anyway, but we're talking about reading here, is good. I think we develop empathy in ways that we might have had before, because when you're reading, say, a fiction book about someone from another land, another place, another anything, you get into their head, and you might not have done that before. So that's good, Like, I live in a quite a diverse area of the world. I mean, man, you walk the streets, you're gonna see people from almost everywhere. But how else do I know people? Unless I either talk to them or read books by people that look like them, or people who come from the same place as them, etc. So that's one thing I really want to do. Not brag about it, just do it as a matter of something I'm doing. You know, I find it, for me, it's easier. I know that we have a platform, so that's why I do talk about it here. But I just, I don't like look at me, because I don't think that's good, for myself anyway. And I was thinking about I don't know why this came to my head, but I was thinking about Victorian um, photographs. The early photographs, even Edwardian, where everybody posed kind of stern looking, and then you find um, pictures where people were goofing off a little bit, making faces, laughing, whatever, and you realize, man, we're all, it's like we're humans, and I really wish, I know I always looked at someone this way, but didn't really know them. So that's why I think reading could do that. Is it goes past the outward look of a place, the National Geographic article or photograph, and goes into. Does anyone understand that National Geographic? Is that still out? Anyway, just, yeah, I think I need that a little more in my reading, and yet, like, I do, in such a way that it becomes like a fun project for me. I have purchased books that I just haven't read yet, so it gives me something to look forward to. But just an ongoing curiosity. Oh, what don't I have in my library? What don't I have in my TBR? What don't I have in my currently reading that I maybe could do? But in such a way that I can find writers, say, from a country that I never read. Maybe the first writer I find I won't like, so I find another one, etc. I was doing that when I was. I'm still working on this. What was it? The Harlem Renaissance. I just thought that would be kind of nice. It's not geographically very different from where I'm at, where I live, but It's still a perspective that I really didn't read much of, except for maybe a little bit in school, and I quite enjoyed it, and I think I will continue. But I don't think that every author I find I'm gonna like. So should that turn me off? No. um, but I also don't want to do it out of guilt. You should do this, and you should stop reading what you're reading, and read only different books, as it were. And because that just gives me thoughts of a diet that I went on years ago, and it could have been a semi-beneficial diet, except for the fact that it was actually pretty high in cholesterol, which wasn't good for me. But when I was having certain health issues, my friend was on her own diet, which took out a lot of carbohydrates, almost all of them, including rice. Are you kidding me? So it wasn't just, okay, gluten-free, it was a lot of things. So she encouraged me to throw out so much of what I had in my house, my other food in my house, and then to buy, which was quite expensive. And instead of doing like portion control, maybe I should have cut a little bit out of this and maybe introduce more of certain other foods that are beneficial. Instead, it was so extreme, and it wasn't like a food allergy where you had to, or you were gonna get very deadly sick. I didn't last long on that diet, and I ended up kind of overreacting and having far too many carbs, and so I think it's kind of just, yeah, balance, like a diet. A balanced diet is good. So I want to continue to do that, to keep reaching out for for voices, for writers that I just weren't things I reached for, and make it something that I reach for. And when I say reach for, I don't mean like, oh, I'm gonna read this because I'm supposed to read, but actually saying, you know what, I want to read this. I'm looking forward to this. That's where my goal is. And another thought I was thinking, and this is probably one I'm not gonna reach at all, but is maybe when I do TBRs, with the exception of my special months, which I call like Jane Austen July kind of things, Victober, whatever, to try to keep my TBR lower and make a little more room for books that come up in the middle of the month or mood reading or whatever. And also so I can continue books that I've been reading and not just keep introducing new books and not finish things. Because that's what happened to me again this year, but really badly this year, where I have so many stacks of books that I'm in the middle of. And now I'm like, it's December, I'm not going to finish all of them. So just maybe find a way to work on that a little bit, but we'll see. That's the impossible dream. And then the other thing is, on top of everything, is to look after my mental health. And this, I would say for everybody, this is important. I mean, 2020 was going to affect everybody, but for me, I have a lot of difficulty with change. Some people like change, some people don't. But I know that even good change I have a problem with. Like if I was going to someone's house and we were supposed to do like potluck dinner, and I was supposed to bring wine, because that's usually what I bring. I'm a beverage lady. But say I came over, with my bottles of wine, and I come over and they say, hey, so we were gonna sit. I know we were supposed to sit here and have a nice conversation and have potluck, but we thought we'd do pizza instead. We're gonna order out pizza, and then we're gonna do karaoke later. Now, I love pizza very much, way too much. And I actually really like karaoke. I don't share that very often, but I really like karaoke. It's one of the few outdoors things that I like to do. But honestly, this is a good change. This is something I would have liked to have done, but I was mentally expecting potluck. This is not an actual example. I'm just, And I probably would end up having a good night, but there'd be one point I'd probably find myself maybe in a bathroom somewhere having a bit of a moment that I have to adjust because I have trouble adjusting. So this year, obviously, was more bad than good of the changes. But there were some things that were, I hate to say it, good in some ways. So, like, I always wanted to be at home more, with my cats working from home. And I know that this is temporary, but it was kind of nice to be able to do that, even if the reasons were kind of messed up. But even that, I think, threw me off so that my reading suffered for a little while, both in every way, quantity, quality, enjoyment, whatever. So I feel like I know that next year, I don't know exactly what's going to happen in 2021, but if we do go into it and we somehow go back to a somewhat quote-unquote normal schedule, even if it's a good thing, I might have some trouble readjusting, and that might affect my reading. So I'm not going to get too worried if some things I've been trying to do don't quite work. And if I have a month where I'm seriously only reading extreme comfort food of books that are, not what I had intended to for the year, because I'm under either I'm under stress or I'm feeling stressed or whatever. I do have anxiety disorders. I don't like to talk about it too much on these channels, but let's face it, it's good to be a little bit open, right? Then I don't, I don't want to give myself so much pressure that it takes away my reading joy or my joy altogether. So in other words, I have goals. I will maybe have lists of books I want to read, like last year I did. Some of them I actually did read. Some of the things I set out to do, I did do. But if something happens where it just kind of doesn't go as intended, I don't want to feel, oh, I'm such a failure. So anyway, that's it for now. I've been watching a lot of booktubers videos about this, so thank you for sharing. And if you guys have anyone else has goals, plans for next year, if you haven't made a video, or if you're not going to make a video, please comment below. Let me know what you think. So that's all for now. This is Catherine taking tea with Catherine. Have a lovely tea and hopefully not anxiety-ridden day. Goodbye.